In this commute, we'll go over the Lyric battery pretty much, so I kind of conclude the video on that one. And we're also gonna go over to pretty much e-bike battery winter care pretty much, which is very important if you're storing your e-bike and so forth. We'll go over kind of, you know, how to properly discharge and then charge your battery during winter conditions and the limitations and all that other stuff. The first thing I want to iterate is about the Lyric Graffiti e-bike, of course, and that's gonna be pretty much the gripe I have with them, which I've gone over already the last two videos. It's almost like beating a dead horse, but this will probably be the final video about that at least. And that is, they go by pretty much on one of the comments that actually Lyric made to me, and that was that yes, the battery on the e-bike can actually do its nominal current, which is not true. And they clearly put that on their website because they're going by phase current and everything else of what the controller can actually do, but they're kind of sidetracking the issue with the actual battery itself, which is pretty much my gripe. Now, they are using a BAC 855 ASI controller, which is a good controller, don't get me wrong. I use that controller myself on my earlier BBS HD builds and stuff like that when I was modifying them and stuff like that to do 72 volts and so forth, but that's not my issue. I mean, they're using good components, don't get me wrong. The motor is probably decent, and then the controller is gonna be decent for what it is, you know what I mean? But my main gripe is pretty much the battery itself, you know what I mean? They went with 18650s, the first one, and second one, they're Samsung 35Es. Not to say they're bad cells or anything like that, but I worked with those cells many times and stuff, and those batteries, you know, anytime you try to push them over 30 amps and stuff like that, it's pretty much their limitation of them, you know what I mean? And that's my main problem with the Lyric Graffiti bike, is that they claim on their website that the battery can do 2500 watts and stuff like that, and even at max power, which the cells, if you're doing the 5P configuration, is actually only rated to do 40 amps. So where they're actually getting that, I'm not sure, but it cannot do the 2500 watts as they claim, or 4700 watts peak and stuff like that, because they got in the 5P configuration. Those cells in that configuration are only going to be able to do pretty much 40 amps at max, and you're not going to push it all the way to 40 amps because then the controller's going to cut out and stuff like that, because the maximum amount on that battery will be able to deliver 40 amps, not 50 amps as they claim that they're using, because they said on the Reddit page that they're using a 50 amp BMS, and the BMS is pretty much there as a safety feature, pretty much to cut out if it goes over that amperage. Now, those cells are only, of course, rated for 40 amps max, and that's what's gonna put out. Now, yeah, I would have gone over phase current and all that other stuff I knew before, what controller they were using and stuff like that, but at the time I didn't know what controller they were using, so I didn't go into the numbers and stuff like that. And to this day, I'm not 100% sure what they're actually using, because they haven't come out with a pre-production bike and stuff like that. But they kind of clarified some stuff. They told me the display and controller they're using and everything else and stuff like that. So now I kind of have an idea of what it's actually going to be once people start receiving their bikes though. But it's not going to be able to handle, you know, either way it goes, the battery system itself over 40 amps. And I wouldn't even push that 40 amps. It'll be like 30-35 amps to be realistic, if you want to get any longevity of those cells and get longevity, and also be able to not cut out on you too as well. So I'm actually probably gonna push it, let's just say at the absolute max, 35 amps pretty much, and that's not gonna be able to output 2500 watts as they claim nominal as far as the battery goes. We're not talking about the motor now, we're just talking about the battery. So there you go. Now, I wish they did go over 60 volt on that, because they did a 60 volt on that. It would have been actually a really good bike. There would have been nothing, it would have been untouchable pretty much, you know what I mean, as far as the price point and what you're getting compared to Super 73 and stuff like that. But I get it. There is also legality reason, and also you got the cost factor too of it. But you know, they could have at least done 21.700s, and at least, even though they might have not got the top speed, they would have been able to get the torque and stuff like that. They went 21.700s because now you got a lot more current you can play with, and they'll be able to continuously handle that current no problem and stuff like that. So they kind of dropped the ball on that as far as I'm concerned. I'm kind of curious to why they didn't go 21.700. It could have been a cost thing, who knows, you know what I mean? Because 21.700s do cost a little more, sometimes even double what 18.650s cost. So that's likely the reason why they decided not to use 21.700s, because the actual frame itself definitely could have fit it, you know what I mean? And then therefore they're not limited by how much current they could actually push out on the bike. Now the other topic we're gonna get into is e-bike care. And one of the things is how do you store your battery during winter conditions and stuff like that. And you know, storing your batteries in winter conditions is actually gonna be a little bit tricky, because you know, you can't charge them water cold pretty much. You don't want to charge the battery anything over under, I should say, 32 Fahrenheit, because you could damage actually the cells and stuff like that too, and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that if you're using your e-bike during the winter time, that's in an insulated garage and that's above 32 Fahrenheit. Because most people, let's face it, they keep their batteries actually in garage, or you know, in the shed or something like that, because they're afraid the battery's gonna explode and stuff like that. So understandably, they're not gonna go ahead and, you know, bring it inside because they're worried about risk of fire and everything else and stuff like that. So you never want to do. Now, as far as discharging using the bike, you can actually ride until it gets to sub-freezing, you know what I mean? The batteries are normally good for on quality cells. They can be good, you know, pretty much down to, you know, -2 even, sometimes -4 degrees. So the bike can handle. You gotta remember, as you ride, those batteries heat up, so you know, you'll be able to get a little bit more out of them. But I really don't recommend. I wouldn't even ride in sub-freezing temperatures, to be honest, because it'll just be way too cold, and the wind chill, you know, will numb you up and stuff like that. You wouldn't be able to safely ride in sub-freezing temperatures anyway. So pretty much general rule of thumb, don't ride your bike in, you know, sub-freezing temperature, below 0, and obviously charge above 32 Fahrenheit, and you'll be good. Now, as far as like storing your battery, you want to make sure that you actually store your battery between 80 and 40%, you know what I mean? You want to keep it within that range, so that way you don't drain down the battery. You don't want to just go ahead and top your battery off and forget about it, or leave your battery fully drained and forget about it. It's one of the reasons why I get a lot of repairs, actually, because people are actually doing that. I gotta get in this lane, you know, because they forget about the battery and stuff like that, and then it discharge. And once you discharge below a certain level, that battery's essentially shot, you know what I mean? Because even if you try to recover it and stuff like that, you know, if you try to recover a cell that's under 2 volts, you can actually risk, you know, of course, the cell will go high resistance, and then risk the cell becoming unstable and stuff like that, when you go and put some current to it to try to recover it and stuff like that, and risk a fire and everything else and stuff like that. So always make sure that your battery is charged at least 80 to 40%, and always make sure that every month you're actually checking the charge on it and stuff like that, and that it's not going to be, you know, that you're not just leaving it for months at a time unchecked and stuff like that, because batteries do self-discharge and stuff like that. Depending on the cell capacity, everything else, they can self-discharge faster than others. What is that? Oh, it's a Stealth Bomber e-bike. Cool. Well, you know, you always want to go and make sure that you actually keep an eye on your battery and stuff like that. And then when summertime does come around and you decide you want to ride, you can, pretty much, you know what I mean? But we're coming up pretty much to the end of the commute, and you know, I'll do other videos and stuff like that. And actually, I will be doing the battery built video soon. It's just that I'm still waiting on the cells, and that's why I haven't done the battery pack built on that one yet, because they were on back order and stuff like that. I haven't forgotten about them. Still doing that build I actually got the motor and controller already and all that other stuff. I'm just waiting for the cells, so that way I could start doing videos on that setup. But this concludes the video.